Now friends, let me explain to you some of the case laws with respect to the private trust. But as I have already explained to you in our regular class also, basics of the private trust. Okay, the most important thing here is the tax liability calculations. Okay, how the calculations will be done. Okay, so in case of a trust, say for example, this is a trust one. Okay, which has got a two trustees. Okay, so I say T. This is a trust, and T1 and T2 are the two trustees. Okay, and it has a two beneficiaries, for example, B1 and B2. Okay, the benefits of the trust property will go to B1 and B2. Okay, hardcore basic, let me explain to you as a repetition, although I have already done it in my regular class. Now, whether this B1 and B2 share is determined or it is not determined, that is the first beginning point as a matter of discussion from the tax liability calculation point of view, whether the share is determined or not determined. In our accounting language, we say supposing 50-50, 60-40, 30-70, whatever. In percentage terms, it should be determined. This is how we logically understand. However, the courts think little bit differently. So, if it is determined, then the tax rates, the calculations will be done separately, and if it is not determined, then it will be done separately. See, first of all, in case of the Barrack provisions, actually this particular topic, the private trust, actually it's a mixed topic with respect to the representative assessee. That's the reason the Barrack provisions I have just given it to you in this particular chapter. Okay, this chapter. Okay, so see, first of all, if there is any trust, okay, if there is any trust, okay, and the trustee, this trustee will be regarded as the representative assessee, and accordingly the tax liability obligations already is there. If it is an oral trust means it is a trust created only by word of mouth, where there is no written document, the trust deed, no written document already there. Okay, first of all, section 164. Okay, see, first of all, 164 directly says that if the share, okay, is indeterminate or unknown. If it is indeterminate or unknown, that means in our simple English we call it as a share is not determined. Okay, so we do not know whether it is 50-50 or 30-70, like that. We do not know that. Okay, so the share is not determined. In that case, it will be subjected to the maximum marginal rates of taxes. Okay, so that is a hardcore basic thing. However, there are some exceptions, that if you are covered by these particular exceptions, then the tax liability calculation will be done as if it is a total income of an AOP. Okay, so subject to exceptions, okay, as if it is a total income of an association of person, and as per the Finance Act, the AOP tax rates is equal to the individual tax rates. The tax rates I am just saying. Okay, so in fact, the MMR provision will not apply, and instead the basic exemption slab 1, slab 2, like that, the calculation of the tax liability will be done if you are covered by the exceptions. Okay, so by default it is MMR if the share is not determined. Okay, however, if the share is determined, okay, now technically law does not say that if the share is determined or like that, but in the other situation, that means naturally the share is determined. Okay, in that case, the taxes shall be levied upon and the recovered from him in the like manner and to the same extent as if it is leviable and recoverable from the person so represented. Okay, so in other words, the tax obligation, the tax liability calculation of the trust will be done just like the person represented by him. That means this particular person means the beneficiary. Okay, so in my example, supposing the beneficiary B1 in this particular trust is an individual, supposing, okay, then it will be levied upon and recovered from him in the like manner and to the same extent. So like manner and the same extent means the beneficiary is individual, so the tax rate will be individual. As simple as that. Okay, if the beneficiary was a company, then it will be the tax rate of the company. Is a very simple English, and this particular language of the law, where the variety of the court cases, and they have interpreted simple that the taxation will be levied, the tax rates will be levied just like the beneficiary, where logically the share is determined. Okay, because if the share is not determined, then section 164 directly is applicable. However, if this particular trust has got business income, then the MMR rate of tax will be applicable. Okay, so for business income it is maximum marginal rate of tax. However, here also there is always a little bit of gray area, but some case laws there which also I will again explain. Now, for example, if I have a business income 10 and if I have a IFOS of 12, okay, so whether this MMR will be applicable only to the extent of 10. Okay, so some of the courts have taken the view that this MMR of business income will be applicable only to the extent I repeat, only to the extent of the business income. Okay. However, this is also very, very debatable. Okay. Now, so broadly speaking, it is whether share determined or share not determined. Okay. And if it is an oral trust, that means a trust created just by word of mouth, then the tax rate is, okay, 1 second. Okay. Then the tax rate is, okay, if it is an oral trust, then the tax rate is MMR. Okay. So here, no need to see whether share determined, not determined, nothing to do. Oral trust means if it is created by word of mouth, that means a trust is not having a registered trust deed, or you can say the executed trust deed. Rather, sometimes it is not even registered, but executed a trust deed. Okay. In that case, if it is not there, then it will be MMR. Now, in India, remember, this oral trust is permitted only by the Muslim community. It is permitted only by the Muslim community because their personal law permits, okay, to create a trust only by a word of mouth. Okay. So, without having a document in writing, it can be created. So, logically, you can say that if it is an oral trust, then logically it can be created only by the Muslim community, and the income tax rates will be the maximum marginal rates of taxes. And in any case, don't forget that a direct assessment is not barred. Okay. So, in case of a trust, okay, so trustees are responsible as a representative assessee. Okay. And the tax rates of a trust will be like a beneficiary if the share is determined, otherwise it will be the MMR. So, trustees will be responsible. So, logically we can say that the trustees are responsible person. Okay. However, if the tax officer wants to do a direct assessment, that means on these people, this is a direct assessment because they are the ultimate beneficiaries. If you want to do the direct assessment on them, okay, then also it is permitted. So, nothing is restricted under the law to do a direct assessment in the situation. Same thing applicable with all the representative assessees. So, even if it is an agent of non-resident, okay, so normally the non-resident is the person who is responsible for the purpose of tax dues and everything. However, if there is an agent, they may prefer an assessment on the agent also. But even if the assessment is preferred on the agent, that doesn't mean that non-resident is not responsible. So, in fact, that the responsibility is possible on either of the shoulders. Okay, the direct assessment is not barred. That means the direct assessment is not restricted. Okay, so if the tax authorities wants to do a direct assessment, they can always do that. So, in light of this, we'll have to understand most of these particular case laws also, friends. We have already used it in our regular class, okay, but I will just explain it to you in due course of time. And remember, the most important here from the trust point of view is whether the share is determined, not determined. This is how the tax liability will get fixed, okay. And there is one small little extra point is of a business income. That means whether the trust has got a business income, okay. So, that is how we should understand this particular situation. Now, friends, let me take up some case laws with respect to this particular trust. Okay. Now, see, as we already know that by default, by basic, the major two proposition from the assessment of the private trust point of view is whether the share is determined or the share is not determined. Okay. Now, if the question use the language like, first of all, whether it is a non-discretionary trust, or sometimes the question will use the language like if it is a discretionary trust. Okay. So, understand these words which are oftenly explained by the courts, and in general also it is a very, very simple thing. Okay. Now, see, when you say that it is a discretionary trust, okay, supposing if it is said like that, it means that the trustees have a discretion to decide that which beneficiary will take how much share. Okay. So, if the question use the language like it is a discretionary trust, okay, it means that the share is not determined. Okay. So, not determined share means it is also called as a discretionary trust. Okay. I repeat, the meaning is that the trustees have a discretion to decide that which beneficiary will get how much. That means by the trust deed, by the document, it is not determined. Okay. Now, opposite of that is a non-discretionary trust. Okay. Non-discretionary trust means the trustees does not have any authority to decide which one will get how much. Supposing that two beneficiaries, then the trust has already specified, the deed already has specified that the sharing is 50-50. Okay. So, if it is 50-50 percentage, which is already specified in the trust document itself, it will be called as a non-discretionary trust. Non-discretionary trust logically means that it is a share is determined. Okay. So, it is called as a non non-discretionary trust. Okay, so understand, and these two words or these two terms should be very, very clear in your mind, first of all, from the question point of view, because otherwise you will always get a lot of, because question will always say discretionary, non-discretionary, like that they will use the language. Okay, now see, one of the thing is that, say for example, there are two beneficiaries, B1 and B2, okay, and their share is determined supposing 50-50. Okay, so it is a non-discretionary trust. Okay, now this particular court, in fact, like this, there are many court cases. Okay, now if you see that here there are two beneficiaries, the share is determined, so it is a non-discretionary trust, that means the share is determined. Now this particular trust, these two are individuals. Okay, so can the other sections which applies to individuals be applicable to them also or not? Okay, so actually it is assessment of the trust, no doubt about that. But for example, if you say this section 54F, okay, or for that logic can be extended even to many more other sections, supposing capital gains exemptions, okay, that it is applicable only to individuals or an HUF. Okay, so in the trust computation, can I give the benefit of this particular section? Okay, so again, some of the courts are divergent on this particular point, but a very popular view that I am just trying to tell you is that since the beneficiaries are individual, the computation will be done just like in the like manner and to the same extent, and therefore section 54F provisions are applicable. Why? Because the beneficiaries are individual. I'll give you one more example. Supposing if the beneficiary was a company, a corporate beneficiary, so certain deductions, supposing ATM, intercorporate dividend deduction, supposing, okay, can that be eligible? Yeah, that can be eligible, because a trust has got a beneficiary is one corporate. So whatever are the benefits or provisions applicable to the corporate will be applicable in the computation of the trust. Okay, this is how it is to be understood. The courts have time and again interpreted the language of the law, and there are many court cases on that, but I am not picking up all of them because it will amount to a lot of undue spending of time from the examination point of view. But the real interpretation is under section 161, where the courts have already explained, okay, the taxes shall be levied upon and recovered in the like manner and to the same extent, as it would have been leviable and recoverable from the person so represented. So the tax liability of the trust, the tax imposition will be done in the like manner, and to the same extent. Okay, so if the beneficiary is an individual, in the computation of the trust, the computation will be done just like an individual, However, this is a debatable view. I repeat, this is a debatable view, but this is a very popular view, because you will also find opposite judgments of these types. Okay, further, another very big debatable view is in case of Poonam Trust and Allahabad High Court. Okay, now first of all, you understand that we want to basically try to understand from practical point of whether the share is determined or not determined, and accordingly we can fix the tax liability, okay, in relation to the trust. Otherwise we cannot do that. Okay, now say for example there is a trust, okay, which is having a two trustees, T1 and T2, but it has got only one beneficiary. Okay, there are no multiple beneficiaries. Okay, so it is very natural and it is very logical that if it is only one beneficiary, then 100% benefits will only go to this beneficiary. Very natural thing. So it did not be specified anywhere, but it is very logical that if there is only one person who is going to take the advantage of this particular trust property or the trust money, then he is only one person. So 100% benefit logically goes to only one beneficiary, and therefore it is a what should I say, it is a determined share, and accordingly section 161 provisions will be applicable. In other words, MMR provision will not apply, because MMR will apply only if the share is not determined. Okay, so the Poonam Trust has taken the view, okay, that in that particular case that these MMR provisions will not be applicable. Okay, in other words, it is a determined share. But the Allahabad High Court has taken a opposite view. Okay, Allahabad High Court has said that no. Now, if it was supposing say 100%, then 100% you should have specified, no, somewhere. You should have specified it somewhere, but you have not specified anywhere. So we cannot say that the entire benefit will only go to the 1% like that. So it has taken opposite view, and it has said that it does not automatically mean, I repeat, it does not automatically mean that it is a determined share. But we as an accountant will always feel it is a 100% benefit will only go to the 1%. But they have taken a different view altogether. But understand the argument of that. Exactly opposite argument it is. Okay. Now see, in the given case, there was a trust. There was a sole beneficiary. Okay. A sole beneficiary means only one beneficiary. Okay. So if it is only one beneficiary, then naturally that you should be saying that the share is determined. You should be saying like that. Okay. But they have not taken the view. The reason being that this beneficiary was not into existence or not identifiable. Since he was not identifiable, then it was not sure that who is the beneficiary. So there was something like a gray area, okay, that you are saying that there is one beneficiary, but who is that beneficiary? Like that, the doubts came into picture, and that's the reason this particular court said that now in the given case we will not say that it is a determined share, okay, because the beneficiary should also be identified with the percentage, like that they are indirectly trying to say, okay, and therefore it will not be regarded as a determined share. And put it differently, it will be covered by section 164, and invariably it will be covered by maximum marginal rates of taxes. Okay, some of the other courts have taken the view, although I have not included all the case laws here because then it will become very bulky from the examination point of view. Okay, sometimes some of the courts have also taken the view little bit other way around. Okay, now imagine that particular point. First of all, it is a sole beneficiary. That means beneficiary is only one. Okay, so there only a little bit of confusion can come. Now, as per the trust document, that one beneficiary, say for example, his age is 15 years. The next year he will become 16 years. Then it will become 17 years. It will become 18 years. Okay, like that it will become. Now, supposing the trust has clarified that you can use this particular benefit, you can distribute this particular money to the beneficiary only after the age of 18. Supposing. Okay, so somewhere between 18 to 25 years of age, you have to distribute or you have to give the benefit to the beneficiary. Or maybe it is also specified that some benefits you can give in these years, some benefit this year, some benefit this year. But the major chunk is to be finally handed over between 18 to 25. Okay. But you have to give benefit only to one person. So 100% benefit you have to give to that particular person. But we will take the view that it is definitely a determined share. Okay. Like that we will take the view. But the opposite view will be that, see, it is 100% correct. But the time of distribution is also not clear. Okay, so if the share is determined, but when it will be handed over, that time is also not fixed. So opposite view will be that the share is not determined. So because we are talking about year wise, no, so in this particular previous year, we will say that I don't know that in which year are you going to give the benefits. Okay, and therefore it is not a determined share, so I will apply MMR. But these are the two opposite, equal and opposite school of thoughts. In an examination condition, this kind of very conceptual question, if coming, you have to mention both the views. But as far as possible, we as an chartered accountant will go with the view that if it is a sole beneficiary, then it is a determined share. Okay. So if it is a sole beneficiary, then we will, unless and until some extra data has been printed anywhere, if it is a sole beneficiary, that means 100% benefit will be given only to one beneficiary. That means section 164, which is MMR provisions, will not be applicable because the share is determined. This is how we will understand and interpret. Okay. So, again, that was a little bit of a gray area, but better to follow that. Okay. Now see, here in this particular case, there was beneficiary, and beneficiary of that particular trust was probably a minor child. Okay, so now here the point is not that determined, not determined, all that. Assessment will be done just like that of an beneficiary. So minor child is basically an individual, a minor individual. So how would the assessment be done? It is in the same manner and in the same extent that the assessment will be carried out. Or put it differently, okay, the minor's income is subjected to the clubbing provisions. Minor's income is straight away subjected to the clubbing provisions, subject to some exceptions. I repeat, but there is a default clubbing provision for the minor's income. So will that be applicable? The court has clarified that yes, the minor's clubbing provision will be applicable because beneficiary is a minor. So assessment will be done in the like manner and to the same extent. Since the beneficiary is an individual, the computation will be done like an individual. It was a minor, so like a minor, and therefore the clubbing provisions like a minor as applicable will be applicable even to this income, which is actually in the assessment of the trust. So the income will be clubbed as per the clubbing provisions. Now friends, see, where there is any trust which is created after the death of a person, okay. So imagine a situation that there is a person, Mr. X, okay, in the time sequence he dies, so there is a death, okay, then he has maybe left behind a will, and in the will some executions is to be done, okay. So because of the death, the executor will come into picture, okay, and in the will he has already specified that some trust is to be created. So whatever money that he is leaving behind, of that some money or the entire money, whatever, is to be converted into a trust for the benefit of someone, okay. So maybe a father is creating a trust, okay, a trust, okay, for the benefit of his son, say for example, okay. So in that case, thereafter the duties of the trustees, that means a trust assessment, will come into picture. So it can be a possibility sometimes that this executor is the same as the trustee, or trustees are a different person and the executor is a different person. Like that, it is possible, okay. That is basically more of a general purpose administrative thing as specified in that particular will, okay. But the question here before this particular court is that at what point of time the executor duty comes to an end, and at what point in time that the trustees duty come into beginning, okay, because executors are also governed by the tax law, some different provisions, okay, section 168 provision, trustees are governed by section 162, 166, like that provisions. So what is a stage when executors duty come to an end and the trustees role come into picture? It is pure a question of fact. This is what they have already explained, okay. It is a pure question of fact, okay. So you have to see that when this particular executor has completed the execution logically, okay. So when he has finish the execution. Execution is basically the distribution of the monies out of the will, whatever the left behind properties and the monies of that particular gentleman, the executor duty is to distribute logically. So when is that distribution logically completed? So at that point in time, the executor's role and the assessment comes to an end, and thereafter the trust is created. So when the trust is created, the trustee's duty come into picture. It is a separate set of the assessment altogether. So the court has already explained that the executors can be the same as the trustees here. In such a can be possible. So there is no such restriction like that, okay. And therefore it is a pure question of fact, and then you have to study the actual facts and decide that when the duty of the executor is over, that time the assessment of the executor is over. That point, the executor's duties are over. So that is the last point for the executor's tax treatment, and thereafter the trustee's tax treatment thereafter come into being. Now Kerala High Court, where the question was that what if there is a business income. Now that we already know that it is a business income is chargeable as per the maximum marginal rates of taxes, but supposing if you have a business income 10 and if you have a income from other sources 20, the total is 30, whether the MMR rate will be applicable only to the extent of the business income or not. So here this court has taken the view that the MMR provisions will be applicable only to the extent of the business income, okay. So if you have a business income, then only to the extent of the business income it will be the maximum marginal rates of taxes, and other incomes will be on its own merit. That means depending upon share determined, not determined, and like that. All these situations has to be understood in the situation thereafter. But if you are applying that MMR provisions with respect to the business income, then it is applicable only to the extent of the business income. This is how this particular court has taken the view. Now friends, one of the another very good and important conceptual aspect with respect to the taxation of a trust, okay. Now see, say for example there is a trust, okay. Trust has got two beneficiaries B1 and B2 and two trustees, say for example T1 and T2, okay. So trustees are the responsible person, that way you already know that, okay. So there are more than one. So can I say that because they are more than one, it is an AOP? Okay, the courts have always clarified that the trust is not an AOP. I repeat, a trust is not an AOP. Even if there are more than one trustee or even if there are more than one beneficiary, I repeat, even if there are more than one trustee or even if there are more than one beneficiary, a trust is not an AOP, okay. So the AOP concepts, the AOP provisions are not applicable in such a situation because a trust is not an AOP. Okay, see, in some of the situations it is stated that, you know, some exceptional situations where the it will be assessed like as per the AOP and like that it is said. Okay, but it is only for the tax rate purposes. Okay, so the entity is not an AOP. Okay, and therefore we cannot apply the concepts of the AOP to this particular trust. Okay, so in the given situation, even if it was more than one beneficiary, okay, in that case also it does not mean that you are an AOP. Okay, supposing the beneficiaries are individual, then the court has already clarified that it is in the same status. It is in the same status. Okay, so beneficiaries are individual, so the AOP, the trust, the tax rates will be just like an individual. It will be in the same status as that of the beneficiary. But by in any case, it cannot be regarded as an AOP. I repeat, it cannot be regarded as an AOP. Okay, so even if there are more than one beneficiary, then also it is not an AOP. So the status of the AOP is not to be given in this particular circumstances. Okay, further, see, in this particular case also is one of the very a valuable case where it was already clarified that where there was a beneficiaries or more than one beneficiaries or the more than one trustees, by itself cannot be regarded as by itself cannot make the trust as an AOP. Okay, so the trust is a different set of an assessee and the AOP is a different set of an assessee in the situation as the court has already explained. Okay, further, the Supreme Court has already clarified that the direct assessment is not barred. Okay, which I already explained that to you some time back. So if the tax authorities would require to do the direct assessment of the beneficiaries, then you can always do that. So there is no restriction that just because the trustees have been responsible, then you can never do that. It's not like that. However, the double taxation is not to be done. So in any situation, you should not imagine a situation that the same income is included for the trust computation and the same also included in the beneficiary computation. It is not like that. So double taxation should be avoided by default. However, the direct assessment is not barred. That means it is not restricted. So if the tax authority would wish to do the direct assessment, you can do that. See, now with respect to the charitable trust, or it is also called as a public trust, that we have already learned that it is income and 15% accumulation from the income is permitted, and thereafter it is an application. Okay, so income, accumulation and the application. This is a simple three-step process in the case of the computation of this particular public trust. Okay, so first of all, when it comes to this particular income, okay, this particular income is always considered as a net income. Okay, it is income minus the expenditure to earn that particular income. Okay, I repeat, it is necessary expenditure to earn that particular income. Further, the courts have clarified that this income computation is not as per the heads of income, typical heads of income. Okay, somewhere with respect to capital gains, there is a specific mention that will be computed like section 48, 49. So you can do it something like that. But in general, the income computation is not done as per the heads of income, because after all it is to be applied for the purpose of the charity, for the purpose of the object, and the object has to be approved and registered. Okay, so first of all, I'll give you an example of that. Now, for example, there is some interest income. Okay, some interest income which may be exempt under section 10. It may be exempt under section 10. Okay, so you will feel that that is not to be applied because it is exempt under section 10. The answer is no, that these interest income is also to be applied, subject to accumulation and application, but it has to be applied for the purpose of the object of that particular trust. Okay, so you may say that it is exempt, but that is basically exemption with respect to the heads of income. But here it is not that. Here the income means a commercial income. This is how the courts have always explained. The income computation here, it would mean that it has to be done in the commercial manner, like how the common man will understand, and accordingly the computation is to be carried out. Okay, further, I'll give you one more example. Supposing income tax payment. Supposing the income tax payment itself. Okay, now we already know that the income tax payment is never allowed as a deduction. Okay, so it is not allowed while computing your income. Okay, because income tax is a personal expense, and like that we already know that. But can this expense be considered? That means income minus expenditure means, can this expenditure include even the income tax payment by itself? Answer is yes, it can be allowed. Okay, in other words, it is very well stated that it is in the commercial principles where we have to do the computation of this particular income, and we have not to think like the heads of income and like that, because section 11, 12, 13 computation is not specifically with respect to the heads of income. Okay, so all the necessary expenditure. However, nowadays there are some restrictions with respect to some types of expenditures where there may be specific provisions. We have to follow the specific provisions, no doubt about that. But in general, it is income minus the expenditure, and this computation is not as per the head, it is as per the commercial understanding, and accordingly the computations are to be carried out in the situation. Okay, further, if there is any donations, contributions, all that, it is of course regarded as income. We already know that. Okay, so any donations which is received is valid even if it is made by means of a book entry. But let me tell you, here people will always misunderstand, misinterpret that how can only a book entry be regarded as a donation or as an income. So it is not just a mere book entry, it is a donation given by the book entry. Okay, now for example, if the donation is given in kind, suppose, okay, so a trust can also receive in kind. For example, a silver coin has been offered, okay, to this particular trust, so it is okay. So you will pass the appropriate book entry. That means the transaction is not done by means of a cash transaction, by means of a banking channel. So will it still be regarded as a donation, and will it be regarded as a income of that particular trust subject to accumulation and application? The answer is yes. In other words, a donation can be given even by means of a book entry, but it should be a valid donation. A mere book entry is not a donation. I repeat, a mere book entry is not a donation, but it is not just a book entry, but it is together with the book entry, it is something more. That means the actual transaction is also has been executed in the situation. Before this particular court, the situation was that the identity of the donor, the person who is giving the donation, is not known or it is not given. Okay, so nowadays we are already specifically having a provisions of section 115 BBC, which we call as a provisions with respect to the anonymous donations. Okay, and nowadays it is taxable as per the special rates of taxes. So this is the best part of the current laws. The way the currently the law operates, we will say that if the identity of the donor is not known, then I will use the provisions of 115 BBC and it will be taxable as per the special rates of taxes. However, in the old days, that means prior to the introduction of 115 BBC, the court has already clarified that section 68 provision, like a deemed income, unexplained money and all that, it should not be applied here, because see, many times it happens that in relation to the trust, the donor may not give the identity, like for example the donor's PAN card and other address proofs and all that. The donor just comes happily and gives the donation, that's all. Okay, so as long as it is a valid donation, by itself cannot be regarded as something like a deemed income, unexplained money or something like that. So in such a situation, it is a anonymous donation, and nowadays the anonymous donation is to be given a treatment with respect to section 115 BBC provision as per the computation methodology which is provided in that particular computation. Okay, further, before the George Forana Church, okay, in other words, Supreme Court already explained something similar to the George Forana Church like case of a computation, that trust money is to be invested, okay, as per section 11.5. okay, so section 11.5 is basically the modes of investment. I repeat, it is the modes of investment. So if you have any trust property and if it is to be invested, it should be invested as per section 11.5 only. Okay, so the trust balance sheet, if you see, you cannot make any damn private investment. You have to invest only in that method and that manner which is provided under section 11.5 of the Income Tax Act. This is how the computation which is to be carried out in this particular situation. Okay, further, from the assessment year 22-23 and onward, that means by the Finance Act 2021, there are variety of the good changes which has been brought into the assessment of the trust. Okay, and one of that particular point is that supposing if there is any corpus donations received, okay, so any corpus donations will also have to be invested as per section 11.5. okay, so non-corpus donations are anyway your income, but the corpus donation should also be invested as per 11.5, and only then it will not be regarded as income. Supposing if the corpus donation is not invested as per 11.5, okay, so you got a corpus donation, then it will be regarded as an income computation. However, if it is invested, then as per 11.5, then it will not be regarded as an income. In fact, nowadays the law is made so beautifully clear that even in the subsequent year, if you make an investment of the corpus donation, it will be regarded as an application of that particular income. Okay. So supposing the year number 1, the corpus donation become income. Okay. And in the year number 2, you invest as per 11.5. So in the first year, corpus donation was already taxed. Okay. But in the second year, it will be regarded as an application. That means because second year you made the investment. So in the second year, it will be go down to reduce your income. Okay. So in other words, the corpus donation previously, again, there was a little bit of a gray area whether should be invested, should not be, like that it was there. But nowadays the law is very clear that even the corpus donations have to be invested. I repeat, it have to be invested as per section 11.5 in order to be eligible for the purpose of not regarding it as an income of that particular trust. Okay. Further, every income computation is done income minus expenditure. In other words, income is always a net income. Now, expenditure on account of the depreciation. Okay, so previously there was some of the case laws and all that, but nowadays the law is very clear. So let us not go into the historical case laws. Nowadays, as per section 11, okay, the depreciation on this particular asset will not be allowed as a deduction if at the time of the acquisition of that particular asset, it was treated as an application of the income. So when you might have acquired, then you treated it as an application. That means application logically go down to reduce the taxable income, and therefore logically the thinking is that in the year of its acquisition, it was fully reducing the income, and therefore now the depreciation on those assets, because depreciation will further reduce the income in the subsequent years. So that is not to be given in the situation. Okay. So the idea was like, you know, the trust was getting double deduction when asset acquired at the time of that. At that time, it was like an application, and in the subsequent years, like a depreciation, like that. Those was the old years. But now in the current year, we will just simply understand that you will not get the depreciation if the asset acquisition in the year of its particular acquisition, it was treated as an application. So that asset depreciation, you will not get it. Okay. And nowadays the questions also, when they come in the exam, they really specify this particular point very, very carefully. Okay. Now the trust normally cannot do any business. I repeat, normally cannot do any business. But if the trust has got an ancillary business, or if it is a incidental business, I repeat, if it is an incidental business, then it is permitted. Okay. In other words, I always explain, and so many courts indirectly has already explained, that a systematic business cannot be done by a trust. However, incidental business, that means a business done to achieve an object of that particular trust, that means a business type activity, a trading type activity, or a business type activity is carried out. But the intention of doing that activity is to achieve the object of the trust. Okay. So if it is an incidental business, then the incidental business can be permitted, and that is anyway okay, and there is no restriction on the law, under the law for that particular point. So incidental businesses are always permitted, and there are now variety of the case laws whether these activities was incidental or that activity was not incidental. So like that, variety of the judgments you can go through on this particular front. But the courts have always stated that incidental business, ancillary business is always permitted by the law, and if it is in order to achieve the object of that particular trust, it is a permitted activity subjected to the conditions of the law. Now friends, some of the case laws with respect to the application of the income. Application of the income. We already know that the income, accumulation and the application. Okay. The income is always income minus the expenditure. That means it is always a net income, which will be subjected to the accumulation. 15% is permitted by the law. Okay. And the balance figure has to be applied for the purpose of the object of the trust. Now, one of the very, very landmark case law, in fact, there are very, very good number of case laws on that, but it is not possible for me to take up each and every case law, a very big list of the case laws here, but understand the concept very, very carefully. The application of the income can mean, it can either be a revenue or it can also be a capital application. Okay. In other words, the law does not say that you have to spend the money. Law does not say that you have to incur expenditure as an application. Law doesn't say like that. You have to apply you have to apply means you have to apply for the object of that particular trust. Okay, so for example, if there is a building acquisition, okay, a building acquisition, you will say it is a capital transaction. Okay, it is a capital transaction, but can it be regarded as an application? Answer is yes, it can be regarded as an application. In other words, the asset acquisitions, the capital outlay can also be regarded as an application. Even a asset acquisition can be regarded as an application for the purpose of that particular object of that particular trust. Okay, now the little bit of a confusion many people create here, or some of the judgments are a little bit divergent, because see, application can also be the revenue. Okay, that means it can also be an expenditure. So some people confuse that what is the expenditure which you have to adjust against the income, and the application revenue expenditure, how you have to adjust it. Okay, so the revenue items, the people will think that, oh, what to do now. Okay, so remember one thing very carefully, the expenditure which is for the purpose of earning the income, this is expenditure for the earning of the income. Okay, will have to be adjusted against the income. That means you have to make it as a net income. However, if there is any revenue outflow, that particular revenue outflow which is for the object of that particular trust will be treated as an application. So it is more like a fund flow statement. I repeat, it is more like a fund flow statement, and something like that you have to keep imagining that what is the purpose. And many times, friends, in the examination condition, the questions will not clearly give you the details that what kind of that revenue outflow was. Okay, they will just say that the maintenance of that property which the trust has got it, and those maintenance expenditure you have done. Like that you will get some very odd kind of an information. So you have to, in your mind, it has to be very clear that revenue items, the revenue outflow is done for what purpose, and accordingly you have to do that adjustment. However, logically, when you do income minus expenditure, it is also going to reduce the income. Okay, and any application is also going to reduce the income. So that way the effect on the computation is to reduce the income only. There is no doubt about that. But whether it is subjected to the accumulation or not, and that is a real good doubt in the examination condition. Okay, because you have to do accumulation from the net income. Okay, so that net income computation you have to do it very much properly, otherwise this 15% calculation in your examination condition will become doubtful and will not go right in the examination condition. So for that, suitable note, a very suitable note is required in this particular situation, in this particular case. Okay, now Maharana of Mewar, Rajasthan High Court judgment, this particular circular also, and this circular also, and there is a special note from this particular. Now all these judgments, circular, and again here also there are variety of the situations here, but let me explain, because from the assessment at 22-23 there is a lot of clarificatory points, good clarificatory points have been amended, and now the law has become very clear, crystal clear. Okay, when it comes to the taxation of the trust. Okay, now first of all, friends, can the trust borrow the money? Okay, understand this very carefully. The trust can borrow the money. Okay, so supposing in a particular year the trust wanted to apply the money for the purpose of the object of the trust, but it did not have a liquidity, but the trust wanted to use, because maybe, say for example, there was a natural calamity and they wanted to help the poor people and they really wanted to do that, so they did it. Okay, but they borrowed the money. So the first point is, can you borrow the money? Okay, so the trust has the powers to borrow the money. So if you have done the borrowal, there is absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever. Okay, so I may say that the loan that you have already borrowed. Okay, now this loan you have used it for the object of the trust. Okay, so can we say that this is an application? The answer is no. It cannot be said as an application, because it is a loan money which you have used it for the object. It is not the income that you have used it. Okay, so the income should be used for the object, then only it will be regarded as an application. So it is a borrowed money. So borrowed money used for the object only, but it cannot be regarded as an application. Okay, so this is what it happened in a particular year. Okay, now in the next year or 2-3 years afterwards, you got an income. Okay, and this income, naturally you will have to repay the loan, right? So this income you will use it to repay. You will use it to repay this particular loan. But now you are using income. Okay, but this is not happening in the same year. It is happening maybe after 2 years, 3 years, whatever. Okay, so can I say that this repayment of the loan out of the income, can it be regarded as an application of the income? The courts have already clarified that yes, it was to be regarded as an application. Circular also clarified the same thing. But nowadays, the law specifically, nowadays the law specifically, okay, from the assessment at 22-23 and onwards by the Finance Act 2021, specific amendment, it has been carried out that income, if it is used for the purpose of repayment of this particular loan, will be regarded as an application of the income. Okay, put it differently, there is no concept of any carry forward and set off. Okay, because in the older system, this repayment of the loan and all that, people were imagining that this is the indirect way of giving you carry forward set off. Okay, so nowadays the law makes it very clear that there is no even concept of this carry forward set off and all that. So the borrowed money taxation from the assessment at 22-23 and onwards by the Finance Act 2021 has been absolutely clear in form of the explanations which has been introduced in section 11. Some of the conditions with respect to the charitable trust, and one of the basic condition is like, you know, that the trust property should be but for the purpose of general public utility, or put it differently, that the trust property should not be used for the private benefits. Okay, in other words, one of the key difference between a private trust and the public trust is that in case of a private trust, there will be identified persons who will take the benefit, and in case of a public trust, there will not be any identified people. It will be basically the group of people or the class of people or the section of the people which will be taking the benefit here. Okay, now see here, that there are again a very good number of case laws, but I'll give you some of the basic examples so that you will understand what is a general public utility. Okay, now see, Andhra Pradesh Police Welfare Society, Ahmedabad Rana Caste Associations and all that, there are variety of the case laws. Okay, now see, say for example, first of all, it is not possible for any trust, I repeat, it is not possible for the benefit, not possible for any trust to give the benefit to everybody in the India. Okay, it is not possible that we give the benefit to the entire public. Okay, because that much of resources the trust should have. No, if the trust itself does not have that much of resources, where is that the trust is going to give the benefit to everyone? Okay, any and everyone. Okay, so basically they will, what they will do, they will make a trust for the section of the public. Okay, now for example, see, for example, I will tell you that if you say trust for the benefit of the blinds, okay, so those people who are visually challenged, only those people can come and take the benefit of this particular trust. So this kind of trust is very much permitted. Okay, supposing there is a trust created only for the physically handicapped persons, for only for women's, only for children's, okay, a trust created for the cancer patients. Okay, so this is basically the class of people. It is a class or the section of the public. The section of the public is also a general public. Okay, we cannot say that these are all private trust. This is basically a perfect element of the public trust. However, if there is any trust which is created for the specified caste, community or religion, nowadays it is not permitted by the law. So that is one of the reasons that you will not be able to take the benefit if there was any trust for the specified caste, community or a religion, then you will not be able to take the benefit out of that particular trust. Now see, this Andhra Pradesh High Court, it was a benefit which was a trust which was created for the benefit of the police employees. Okay, so can it be said that this is a general public? The court said that yeah, this is a general public, there is absolutely nothing wrong whatsoever, because that is also one of the section of the public. Okay, and therefore we cannot say that this is a private. In fact, it is eligible for the purpose of section 11, 12, 13 benefits, subject to the other conditions of the section that of course should be satisfied. Ahmedabad Rana Caste Association, here the benefit which was given with the specific caste of the people, okay, that was Rana caste. Okay, so can you say that it was a general public? The court said that it is a general public, even that particular caste as a section of the public is a general public. But nowadays we cannot give the benefit to this kind of a trust. The reason being that it is for the specific caste, community or religion. Okay, so a specific caste is a restriction for the purpose of giving the benefit. However, as per general understanding, it is also a section of the public. This is what this particular court has already explained in this particular situation. So put it differently, in this particular situation, it is a general public. However, the conduct of that particular trust, okay, should also be something like for the general public. Now, for example, see, supposing there is a trust created for the benefit of the blinds, okay, so then anyone who is eligible can easily go and make an application, some forms etc. will be there, you can make an application, and on the merits that you will be given a benefit out of that particular trust property. So very simple kind of a process, okay. However, if there is some very excessive powers to the trustees to discriminate the people, to give benefit or not to give the benefit, like that and all that, so if that doubts come, then it is not a general public. So Ahmedabad Rana Caste Association was also one of the situations where there was so much of rules, regulations in that particular trust, okay, that it was like a huge discretion and the huge powers to the managing committee, and that was not basically the in the spirit of the general public, okay. So that was the activity of that managing committee was not so, what should I say, transparent, or it was not so materialistic to be given with respect to the general public only. So the activity, the way the trust operates, that is also one of the basic point which will decide, or which will bring us to the conclusion that whether it was a general public or it is not a general public, okay. So one of the condition is that the trust property should be for the general public, okay. Now, what is a general public, what is not a general public, like that variety of the judgments will come into the play, okay. Now see, here it was some rich people, elite class people, okay. So some trust benefit which was to be given, trust property or the trust was created for the benefit of some elite class people. So it is a general public, and they are also general public, okay. So just because they are rich people, that does not mean that they are not general public. So the main question here is that whether it is a general public. Of course, it is subjected to the other conditions of section 11, 12, 13 also, which should satisfy only then the exemption that you will get it in this particular situation, okay. Now, in case of Delhi Stock Exchange Association, where there is any stock exchange related activities which was done, okay. So can it be said that this is a general public, okay, it was done with respect to the general public. Now, in this particular Delhi Stock Exchange, there was one very unique and a detailed discussion which was done by this particular court, okay. That it was a limited company, that means it was already having a, what should I say, share capital, and it was making some profits, and thereafter it was even distributing the dividends, okay. So because it was something like a corporate entity where the activity was done in such a way that you make profits and then you give dividends, it was more like a systematic business, something like that. So you say that section 11 benefit is not available to this kind of an assessee, okay. However, the activity looks like it is, but for the, it is not that a private sector type situation, but here the way the business was done, it was done with the profit motive and with the idea to distribute dividends to the shareholders. So, and that's the reason section 11 benefit, because it is general public utility, okay. So that the basic idea of section 11 was not satisfied, and that's the reason it is not available. The benefit is not available to this particular assessee type, okay. Chartered Accountant Society, which was basically doing study, case studies, and the publishing the journals and other informative data to the chartered accountant community. This is also general public utility. This is not for the specified, what should I say, identified individuals or something like that, okay. So any of these education related activity, knowledge related activities was general public activity. Bharat Diamond Bourse, the Supreme Court, this was also like to promote the business of exports and the necessary activity to promote export from India to the another country, and all the necessary activities to facilitate this particular international trade and all that. So your activity was again similar to general public utility, and it was in a corporate entity, but again this particular corporate entity was not doing business like with intention to do profit motive and dividend distribution. So that active motive is also very much important in such a situation. But Bharat Diamond Bourse, the court clarified the way the activity was done, it was but for the general public, and therefore subject to conditions of section 11, 12 and 13, the benefit of 11, 12 and 13 can be given to this particular trust. Certain violations of section 13. See, this section 13 has some of the conditions. If it is violated, then section 11, 12 benefit is not available, and it has its own basic conditions. One of the condition is that every investment that you are making, it has to be as per section 11.5, that is your modes of investment. Okay, so if you violate this, in that particular case you are violating the investment conditions of this particular trust, and you will not get the exemption of section 11, 12 and 13 in the situation. Now, say in the given situation, it was assessee has already made some violations of section 13, that is section 11 for investment. Okay, and here certain money that was advanced to a related party. Okay, so the transfer of money to the related party would amount to a violations. Okay, and therefore you will not be eligible for the purpose of benefit of section 11, 12 and 13 in this particular situation. Okay, however, if there is any trust, okay, which is getting some donations or it is getting some contributions, but that is you are getting it in kind. Okay, so you are receiving some assets, okay, which is in form of a donation, but simple English, somebody is gifting the shares to the trust, so the trust is receiving that, okay, as a donation, okay, of shares in the company. Okay, so will that be a violation? Because certain shares of a company, the investment cannot be made as per section 11.5. So 11.5 you can make the investments only in the specified manner, but in some of the situations you cannot make the investments. But here is the situation where the trust has not made the investments. Okay, the trust has got those particular shares as a donation. Okay, so is there any violation? The court already explained that here in this case there is no violation of section 13. However, if these shares or if this particular asset, okay, if these asset do not satisfy the conditions of section 11.5, for example, okay, so what you have to do, you have to liquidate this particular asset and thereafter you have to invest this particular money as per section 11.5. That means you don't hold this particular investment for a longer period. However, what is long, short, etc. specifically not provided anywhere, but since you have got it as a donation for reasonable period, it will be okay, but otherwise then you have to liquidate it, and after the liquidation you have to reinvest the money as per the modes which is specified under section 11.5. So basically section 11.5, the modes of investment has to be complied with. That is one of the very key essential thing as a matter of condition for the purpose of getting exemption under section 11.